The old library smelled of dust and forgotten memories. In the corner where shelves leaned under the weight of neglected manuscripts, a young researcher named Zaid stumbled upon a volume that had no title on its cover. Its leather was cracked, its edges burned, and strange ink markings stretched across it, as if someone had tried to erase them. The caretaker of the library, an old man with trembling hands, warned Zaid not to touch it. "That book is not like the others," he whispered. "It carries words that were meant to be hidden." Zaid had heard rumors before. Students whispered about a banned book on Jinn, a manuscript said to contain secrets too dangerous to spread. Some claimed it had been suppressed centuries ago by scholars who feared its misuse. Others said it was merely a collection of myths. But the moment his fingers brushed the rough leather, Zaid felt a chill. It was as if something unseen was watching him. Against the old man's warnings, he carried the book to his desk and opened. Its first page. The opening lines were written in a style that shook him. "The Jinn are not distant. They are near. They walk beside you in silence, watching, waiting, whispering. The one who denies their presence is already in their grasp." His heart beat faster. He knew well that the Quran itself spoke of Jinn, confirming their existence as a creation of smokeless fire. He remembered the lessons of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who explained that Jinn live among us though unseen, and that some are believers while others are rebellious. But the words of this book were different. Raw, direct, and filled with warnings. It described encounters between man and Jinn, some righteous and others terrifying. It spoke of villages where people disappeared after mocking the unseen, of children who laughed with invisible companions only to fall sick days later, and of scholars who used verses of the Quran to shield themselves when attacked in their dreams. As Zaid read further, he came across a passage that felt almost alive on the page. When the Jinn rebel, they cling to human weakness. They feed on arrogance, lust, and greed. They are repelled only by remembrance of Allah and by the authority of those who stand in the light of truth. The words unsettled him. He remembered narrations that Imam Ali had once spoken about the reality of Jinn, that they can tempt, they can whisper, but they have no power over the one who clings firmly to God. The manuscript echoed this teaching, but added stories of those who ignored the warnings only to fall into madness. By midnight, the library was empty except for him. The oil lamp flickered, and the shadows stretched across the walls. The more he read, the more he felt that the shadows were not just shadows. He thought he heard soft whispers, words too low to understand. He closed the book, his hand trembling. But curiosity burned stronger than fear. He turned to a chapter titled The Covenant of Fire. It spoke of how some men throughout history had sought power by calling upon the Jinn. They performed rituals in darkness, sacrificing animals and reciting forbidden names. In return, rebellious Jinn appeared, promising knowledge, gold, or control over enemies. But always the book warned such bargains ended in destruction. Those who thought they commanded the Jinn became their slaves instead. Zaid felt sick reading this. He knew that Islam strictly condemned such practices. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had taught that seeking aid from Jinn in forbidden ways only led a person further from Allah. But the manuscript gave horrifying details of what had happened to those who ignored this command. One story described a ruler who summoned Jinn to strengthen his throne. For a time he triumphed. His enemies fell, his coffers overflowed, but when his arrogance grew, the Jinn turned against him. His palace burned in a single night, and not even his bones were found. Another section described the righteous, servants of Allah who were protected from the mischief of the Jinn. These were men and women who prayed at dawn, who fasted sincerely, who remembered Allah with every breath. The book claimed that such people shone with light in the unseen, so much so that even rebellious Jinn could not approach them. The author wrote that Imam Hussein's courage on the plains of Karbala had struck fear not only into men, but also into unseen creatures who witnessed his devotion to God. Zayd leaned back, shaken. Could it be true? Could Jinn really be witnesses of Karbala, silently present when swords clashed and truth stood against falsehood? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. If so, then the unseen world had carried memories that humans could. Only imagine. The following pages revealed something even more disturbing. The book described 40 days after death, not only as a transition for humans, but also as a time when Jinn lingered around graves. They tried to whisper into the hearts of families, tempting them to despair, or leading them into strange rituals that had no basis in faith. The manuscript warned, "Do not speak to the unseen at the graves, for they are not your loved ones. They are deceivers who seek your trust." This warning echoed what he had been taught, that the soul of the dead rests in Barzakh, not wandering freely, and that voices heard at graves claiming to be the deceased are often tricks of the Jinn. Yet here it was, written centuries ago, in this forbidden book, as if to remind him of dangers many had forgotten. Hours passed. Zayd realized he was sweating, though the night was cold. The lamp flickered violently, and for a moment he thought he saw movement at the edge of the room. He forced himself to recite verses he remembered from childhood, verses that brought calm and protection. The whispers faded, but the feeling of being watched did not. The last chapter he dared to open that night was titled, "The Secret That Changed Everything." His hands shook as he turned the pages. The chapter described a hidden truth, that Jinn had tried for centuries to distort the faith of humans. They inspired false writings, whispered lies into the ears of tyrants, and disguised themselves as saints to mislead the weak. But the book declared that their greatest fear was the Quran itself. When its verses are recited sincerely, it said, the Jinn burn. They scatter like ash in the wind. And when the name of Muhammad, peace be upon him, is spoken with love, the rebellious among them flee. Zayd's heart softened at those words, for all the fear the book created had ended with light. It reminded him that truth was stronger than deception, that faith was stronger than fear. He carefully closed the manuscript, covering it with cloth as if to contain whatever power lingered inside. As he stepped out of the library, dawn was breaking. The call to prayer echoed through the streets, steady and reassuring. Yet his heart was restless. The manuscript was real, its stories too detailed to ignore. He could not decide if it was a warning from the pious or a trap laid by the deceived. But he knew one thing: his life had changed. He had touched a secret that had been hidden for centuries, and once touched it would not let him go. The streets of the old city were quiet as dawn spread its pale light. Zayd walked quickly, clutching the manuscript beneath his cloak as though it were alive. The sound of the morning call to prayer comforted him, but it did not erase the unease twisting in his chest. He had seen enough in those pages to know why scholars might have hidden this book. Yet he also felt that he had been chosen to discover it. Back in his small room, he locked the door and unwrapped the cloth. The book seemed heavier than before, as if it absorbed the weight of his fear. He placed it on the wooden desk and whispered, "In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate," before daring to open it again. The next section he read was called The Divided Path. It described how jinn, like humans, were given free will. Some worshipped Allah and followed his prophets, while others defied and rebelled. The righteous among them prayed, fasted, and lived in obedience. But the disobedient ones roamed the earth in search of weak hearts to control. The manuscript explained that when humans align themselves with arrogance or cruelty, they unknowingly open doors for these rebellious jinn to influence them. Zayd paused. This was no different from what he had learned in his religious studies. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had warned that Satan flows through the blood of man like veins, whispering temptations, and that only the remembrance of Allah could repel him. But the manuscript went further, recounting specific incidents. It told of a merchant who grew obsessed with wealth. Each night a shadowy figure appeared at his bedside, offering him visions of treasures. The man awoke, restless and greedy, and within months he had cheated everyone around him. When he finally died, his grave was said to burn with the fire of his own greed, a torment brought not just by his deeds but also by the jinn who had lured him. As Zayd read these tales, he wondered whether they were literal or symbolic, yet the detail was too precise, too haunting, to dismiss as mere metaphor. He continued. The manuscript then spoke of the guardians of light, souls who resisted the whispers of jinn through constant worship. It described their nights filled with prayer, their hearts alive with remembrance, and their voices reciting Quran until the break of dawn. Such people, it said, became like burning torches in the unseen world. Even the darkest jinn could not approach them. The manuscript claimed that Imam Ali's courage in battle was not only physical but spiritual, for the rebellious jinn who saw him fled in terror at his unwavering devotion. Zayd's mind swirled with these images. Could the unseen really have watched those moments of history? Could they have witnessed Karbala, where Imam Hussain stood against an empire of oppression? The book seemed to suggest that the unseen world bore witness to every act of truth and falsehood, carrying those memories until the day of judgment. But the more he read, the heavier the air in his room became. The candle flickered, though no breeze stirred. A scratching sound echoed faintly against the wall, like claws dragging across stone. Zayd froze, his heart pounding. He whispered verses of protection, and the sound faded. Yet his fear grew stronger. The manuscript had warned that opening its pages would attract attention. Was that what he was experiencing now? The following chapter was called The Masks of the Deceivers. It explained that jinn often disguise themselves as voices of guidance, pretending to be the spirits of loved ones or saints. They whispered in dreams, urging people toward strange rituals, convincing them that they were receiving hidden wisdom. In reality, they were dragging hearts away from the straight path. Beware of the unseen that flatters you, the book cautioned. The true message of Allah is already complete. Anything that demands secrecy and deception is from the enemy. Zayd felt a chill as he recalled stories he had heard as a child of people who claimed to summon their dead relatives, only to be led astray by shadows that were not human souls. The manuscript confirmed what he had been taught, that the dead remain in Barzakh and do not roam the world freely. Voices that claim otherwise are deceivers from among the Jinn. The next night, Zayd decided to test what he had read. He visited the graveyard where his father was buried. Standing in the silence of the night, he recited verses from the Koran for his father's soul. The air was calm until he heard a faint whisper behind him. Zayd. He spun around, but no one was there. His heart raced. The whisper came again, closer this time, soft and almost familiar. For a terrifying moment, he thought it was his father's voice. Then he remembered the manuscript's warning. Do not speak to them. They are not your loved ones. Gathering his courage, he recited the words of remembrance louder, calling on Allah for protection. The whisper vanished. He left the graveyard shaken, realizing the danger was not just written in that book, but alive in the world around him. Days passed. Each time Zayd opened the manuscript, new dangers seemed to follow. He dreamt of shadowy figures watching him from the corners of rooms. He woke to find scratches on his window, though no one could have reached it. Once he smelled smoke in his room, though no fire burned. The manuscript had said that Jinn were made of smokeless fire, and now he wondered if their presence lingered around him. Yet his thirst for truth pushed him deeper. He reached a section that explained why this book had been banned. The author claimed that knowledge of the Jinn had been hidden not to protect faith, but to prevent misuse. Some leaders feared that people would attempt to summon Jinn for power, as others had done in the past. By banning the book, they hoped to bury the temptation. But the author insisted that hiding knowledge only strengthened the deceivers. He wrote, "To fight the unseen, one must know its ways. To ignore it is to walk blindly." This passage troubled Zayd. On one hand, he understood the danger of spreading such knowledge. On the other, he saw wisdom in knowing how to protect oneself. He thought of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who never hid the existence of the unseen, but warned against falling into its traps. Perhaps this book was not evil itself, but dangerous in the wrong hands. One night, as Zayd sat with the manuscript open, he noticed a folded page near the end. Carefully, he unfolded it to reveal writing in darker ink, as though it had been added. Later, it was titled The Oath of 40 Nights. The passage claimed that anyone who read the manuscript for 40 consecutive nights would begin to see the unseen world clearly. The shadows of Jinn would no longer be hidden. Their whispers would become words, and their presence undeniable. But the writer warned, few survive this without madness. Only those whose hearts are anchored in truth will endure. Zayd's breath caught. Was this the secret that had shocked the Islamic world? That such a ritual existed, hidden in a manuscript centuries old? He could hardly imagine the consequences if ambitious rulers or misguided seekers used it. The temptation for power would be too great. He closed the book and pressed his forehead to the wooden desk. His mind battled between fear and curiosity. To see the unseen, was that not the ultimate knowledge? Yet he remembered the words of faith, that unseen. Matters belonged to Allah, and that to force open such doors was arrogance. Still, he could not deny the pull of the book. The nights grew heavier. Zayd began to feel that he was not alone in his room. Sometimes he caught glimpses of movement in the corner of his eye, shadows that vanished when he turned. He heard his name whispered softly when no one was there. At times he smelled the faint sweetness of musk, and at other times the bitterness of smoke. One evening, as he prepared for prayer, he heard a firm knock on his door. Startled, he opened it to find the old library caretaker. The man's eyes were tired but sharp. "You took it, didn't you?" he asked. Zayd froze. He tried to deny it, but the man stepped inside, his voice lowered. "That book has ruined many before you. Do not think you are the first. Others sought its secrets, and none returned unchanged." The caretaker explained that centuries ago a group of scholars had debated the manuscript. Some wanted it destroyed, fearing its influence. Others argued it contained truths worth preserving. In the end, they locked it away, hoping it would be forgotten. "But the Jinn never forget," the old man whispered. "They guard that book as if it belongs to them. And now that you have opened it, they are watching you." Zayd's blood ran cold. The man warned him that if he continued reading, the tests would grow harder. "They will come in your dreams, in your solitude, in your prayers. They will try to deceive you with faces you love. If you are not steadfast, you will fall." The young researcher trembled, but his resolve did not fade. He had seen enough to know that the unseen was real. Now he wanted to uncover why this knowledge was suppressed, and what truth it held for those who walked the path of faith. That night he placed the manuscript before him once more. His candle burned low, the shadows thickened, and the whispers began again. But this time he did not shut the book. He turned the page to the next chapter, his heart pounding, ready to face whatever came. The candle flickered low as Zayd's trembling fingers turned the next page of the forbidden manuscript. The shadows in the corners of his room seemed to stretch longer, as if leaning closer to witness what he was about to read. His heart pounded, but his determination was stronger than his fear. The chapter was titled, "The Keeper of Secrets." It began with a chilling line. "Every seeker of the unseen will be sought in return. Whoever opens the door must face the guardian behind it." As Zayd's eyes traced the ink, he felt the room grow heavier. The air thickened, and the candle dimmed as though it was being smothered. He heard the faintest of whispers, not words. This time but a low murmur that seemed to echo from inside his skull. He shut his eyes, reciting the verses of remembrance he had known since childhood. The whispers faded, but only for a moment. The manuscript described a figure known only as the Keeper. According to its words, this entity appeared to those who delved too deep into the mysteries of the Jinn. It was neither fully Jinn nor human, but something in between, a deceiver who tested the resolve of anyone seeking forbidden knowledge. The Keeper offered bargains, wealth, power, even glimpses of the future. But the manuscript warned that every bargain ended with destruction. Suddenly, a knock echoed against the door of Zayd's room. Sharp, slow, intentional. His breath froze. The old caretaker had warned him. The Jinn would come with faces he loved. He whispered prayers and did not move. The knock came again, this time softer, accompanied by a voice. "Zayd," it called. "It is me." His heart shattered. The voice was his mother's, gentle, filled with love, exactly as he remembered. But his mother had been dead for years. Tears filled his eyes. The manuscript's warnings rang in his mind. Do not trust the voices. They are not your loved ones. He clenched his fists and cried out, "My mother rests in the mercy of Allah. You are not her." He recited the holy words louder, his voice shaking. The knock ceased. The room fell silent. Yet in that silence he felt a presence when he dared. To open his eyes, he saw it, a shadowy figure at the corner of the room, taller than any man, its form shifting as though woven from smoke. Its eyes glowed faintly red, and its voice was a mixture of whispers, both male and female speaking at once. "You have opened the book," it said. "Now you must hear the truth." Zayd's lips moved quickly in prayer, his eyes locked on. The figure, the shadow flinched at the words, its form trembling like fire in the wind. Yet it did not vanish. "What truth?" Zayd demanded, his voice trembling but steady with faith. The figure hissed, "That we have walked beside your kind since the first man, that we whisper into the hearts of rulers and beggars alike, that we build empires and destroy them, and that this book is ours." Zayd shook his head. "No, the book is a warning, not your possession." The figure's form grew darker. "The warning is ours as well. Without us you would not even know your own weakness." Zayd realized then what the manuscript had meant. The Jinn did not only seek to mislead with false promises, they also sought to claim truth itself, to distort even the warnings into tools of fear. The shadow crept closer, and the smell of smoke filled the room. His hands trembled as he reached for the book. With his other hand he held his prayer beads, whispering the names of Allah. The shadow screamed, its voice like a storm, shaking the room. The candle's flame shot upward and then died, plunging him into darkness. But Zayd did not stop praying. The words poured from him, each syllable cutting through the unseen. He remembered the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that the devils flee from the house where God is remembered. He remembered the courage of Imam Ali, who stood firm in every battle without fear. He remembered Imam Hussain, who faced an army with nothing but truth. Their strength was not in secrets or forbidden knowledge, but in unwavering devotion to Allah. The shadow shrieked, and then dissolved into smoke, vanishing into nothingness. The air cleared. The room was silent. Once more, when Zayd opened his eyes, he was alone. The manuscript lay before him, its pages trembling as if stirred by an unseen wind. For the first time he saw it clearly. This book was not meant to be a path to power, but a test, a mirror. It revealed the reality of the unseen, yes, but more importantly, it revealed the weakness of the human heart. If one read it with greed, they would be lost. If one read it with faith, they would only find confirmation of what had always been taught, that protection lies only with Allah, that the Quran is the shield against darkness, and that the path of truth does not need hidden books. It needs devotion, justice, and remembrance. Zayd carefully closed the manuscript. His tears fell onto its cover. He realized then why it had been banned. Not because it was false, but because it was dangerous. Dangerous for those who sought power, dangerous for those who were weak, dangerous for those who would mistake its warnings for invitations. The next morning, he carried the book back to the library. The old caretaker awaited him, his face lined with both relief and sorrow. Without a word, Zayd placed the manuscript into the man's hands. "I understand now," Zayd whispered. The truth was never hidden in these pages. It was always in the Quran, in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the sacrifices of the righteous. This book only tested my heart. The caretaker nodded, his eyes glistening. Then you have passed where others have fallen. Together they sealed the manuscript once more in its wooden chest, locking it away deep in the library's archives. Zayd felt no regret. The whispers that had haunted him were gone, and in their place was clarity. He stepped outside as the sun rose over the city. The call to prayer filled the air, strong and steady. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude. He had sought hidden secrets, but he had found something greater, the reminder that true strength lay not in forbidden knowledge, but in faith and justice and in the remembrance of God. The banned book on Jinn was not a treasure of power, but a mirror of the soul. It exposed greed, temptation, and arrogance, drawing out the weaknesses that Jinn exploit. Yet for those anchored in faith, it revealed nothing new, only the eternal truth that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had already taught. The Jinn exist, but they hold no power over those who cling to Ahl-e-Bait, the secret that shocked. The Islamic world was not that Jinn could whisper, or that they could tempt, for this was already known. The true secret was how easily humans could be deceived into seeking what they did not need, forgetting that their greatest shield was already in their hands, the Quran, the remembrance of Allah and the example of those who lived and died in truth. For Zayd, the manuscript became a turning point. He no longer sought forbidden mysteries. Instead, he sought to live by the clarity of faith, to honor the courage of Imam Ali and Imam Hussain, and to walk in the path of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him. The Jinn might whisper, but he had learned to answer with light, and that was the truth that changed everything.